Oh, g'day everyone, and welcome to round 10 of the weekend wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. Unfortunately, not good news, which is a bit of a shame. Another gallant loss, I guess you could say, but plenty to talk about, and we don't want to waste any more time because Oscar's racing later on tonight, and we want to get there around it. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it, shall we? Welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord and on YouTube. We have a nice little crowd who's rolled in, many who were availing themselves of the pre-podcast chatter, and those non-disclosure agreements will be sent out to you shortly to sign. Thanks very much. Thanks to everyone who's joined us shuffling in there on YouTube. Already a nice little crowd settling in. Jeff, I will get you to move your monitor just a little bit so you're a little bit higher on the screen because you're dicky knee again. That's much better. Thank you, sir. And while we're at it, how are you, mate?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, mate. Licking my wounds after another weekend that didn't quite go the way we wanted it to. Didn't quite have the composure to get the job done, but again, a competitive effort.
Yes, a competitive effort. Have you got earbuds in tonight, sir?
I don't know.
Ah, as I can hear you reverbing through your speakers. So you go and sort yourself out. There's poor preparation on your behalf. And I'll say g'day to Mac. How you going, Mac?
No, fine, Finn. Very disappointed with the loss, but I did tip it, unfortunately, and it probably went to script, actually.
Well, it was like watching a replay of the last bloody 7 or 8 games against Collingwood, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
We could pretty much press play on last year's podcast and have the same outcome, which is a shame, but what? Now he's gone all together. Oh, you two, I swear to God. But, yeah, I mean, look, we'll get into it more in a sec, but let me just get my ducks in a row. Don't forget, if you are in the Discord live studio audience and you'd like to have something to say, please feel free to stick your hand up there and we'll get you on board. We love having people on making sense more than we do, don't we, mate?
That's true. Just coming back to the game, though, there was one different factor about this game that was different than the many other ones in the past. I thought this one was actually winnable in the sense that we did have opportunities to win it, and we're not talking about 1 or 2 or 3. There were 5 of them actually where they were shots for goal that should be kicked at this level, but we didn't have the mental toughness to do it. If we had done that, we may have had a different result for you, which is something we. Other times it's been the fact is that they've just, as they're so good with their organisation, when they're under pressure, like everybody knows where they're supposed to go, knows what they're supposed to do, and that's why they're so hard to beat in the close ones. But we could have actually got a reasonable lead if we'd kicked straight, and we're not talking about shots from acute angles, etc. There were 5 that should have been kicked from a regulation AFL league player standard, and. From that point of view, I'm very disappointed because if we'd kicked them, who knows? We may have well won the game, but we didn't. And some of the shots, Rankine's too, were just incredible to think that a player with his talent would actually, I don't know what they were, shanks or inside his head boot, but flying out to the right and missing out of bounds on the foot, which is just incredible, really. And to me, the thing was a disappointment, the fact that if we'd played with AFL standard shots for goal, we might have won the game, but we didn't take those opportunities, and Collingwood just won't give you a second chance.
Look, there's no doubt about that, and I want to talk a little bit about that as we go through the show, but there's no doubt that at key moments we fluffed our lines, and a lot of the shots were very gettable, and if my hamstrings were a bit better, I'd pull out and even I could have kicked that because there were a few there. I mean, we all know which ones they were. I want to have a conversation with you both in a little while about, mental state, etc. That said, they missed a couple too. Jamie Elliott missed one early, and there was one or two others that they missed that they could have got. So it wasn't the be-all and end-all, but certainly when the game was there to be won, we decided we didn't want to win it. And that's pretty much what it boils down to. Now, for those on YouTube, don't forget you can chat along as well. We've got the chat integrated, so both the Discord and YouTube chats can see each other, and they're both streamed on the screen. So if you want to have your say on the YouTube chat, please go right ahead. They'll all come up on the screen. All right, well, look, let's not mess around and let's talk about the game. Of course, it was Collingwood 11-12-78 to 10-8-68, a margin of 10 points in the end. So last week, gentlemen, we copped a lot of shit on the comments regarding negativity and regarding the fact that even though we won a showdown, we were still talking as if it was a loss and blah, 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 blah. Now, Brownie, you know me. I'm not one to say I told you so. But...
Oh, hell no.
But I think this is the outcome against Collingwood was exactly what we were talking about, right? It was exactly what we could foresee based on the performance that was put up against Port Adelaide the previous week.
Yeah, definitely. It was, I suppose the fact that we expected us to get it done a lot easier against Port, and there were some deficiencies there. But also, even from a selection point of view, I thought this week was a little disappointing that, I think I said last week I would have rested Tex. He hasn't had a break. I thought we had some opportunities to get a bit more vibrancy in the team, and we didn't take it.
Now, Jeffrey, your microphone has switched over to your laptop microphone, so can you go into Discord, please, and please change it back to condenser microphone?
Certainly.
And can you stop the sound coming out of your speakers, or else I'll disconnect you? Because it's freaking annoying. Oh dear, don't you love rookies, Macca? Not like you, an old timer.
No.
You're a bit like Tex. You're good for a half. Good for a half.
No, I'm variable, mate. I don't know when I'm going to bugger up myself.
No, look, I guess for those who tune in occasionally with us and they love the Crows and support hard and all the rest of it, sometimes I think we can come across a little bit negative, but I just want to say to those people, we want a flag just like everybody else. And I think we approach this podcast with that in mind, don't we? We're not looking at weeks in isolation. We tend to want to look at the bigger picture and what we're building towards. Would you say that's right, Macca?
Yeah, no, 100%. Deep down, I mean, we really hurt when we lose. We really do hurt. And when we win, we look at that win to say, was that really a good win? That one that will stand if we play that way against the top side? Will it stand up? And what Theme was really on about last week was if while we won the game last week, it just wasn't of a nature that would stand up. Now we actually played a lot better than that this week, and we lost. So it means we're still not quite there, because I think we have a team that's good enough to actually do it, but physically. but it's not mentally tough enough yet. And that's one thing that Collingwood are. They are mentally tough. They know, they're like bloody robots when the pressure's on. They know where to go. They know what to do. They practice and they've rehearsed this, and they know it off by heart. Some of that lack of mental toughness you might throw back at the coaches and say, well, have they not prepared the players for this so that they can do it by rote rather than have to think about it too much? But we know that, just from observation, and you out there know that as well, that there is always room for improvement. And we're at a stage where we're coming along very nicely, in my opinion, very nicely. But we need to go that next step, and we don't need to stay at that level that we're at. We need to improve every time we go out. And if we accept not improving, we won't get there. You agree with that, Fiend?
100%. And if you look at it rationally, we have beaten the teams we beat last year, and we've lost to the teams we lost against last year so far this season. So in terms of actual results, we haven't shifted at all. We haven't beaten anyone who beat us last year. So, and Brownie, just give me a little hoy, because I think I know what your problem is. I reckon you haven't got your microphone muted on Teams. So on Teams, not on Discord. If you want to mute that, then you should be right. I was saying to Brownie earlier that an indication of what we're talking about is the selection of Brodie Smith a couple of weeks ago. And in and of itself, Brodie had a decent game and he served his purpose and he wasn't disgraced. Probably played better than a lot of people expected him to be honest. But the simple fact is, Macca and Brownie, if we had played Charlie Edwards that week, and then if we had dropped Wayne Miller when Hinge came back, then Charlie Edwards would have been 2 or 3 games in by the time we hit Collingwood, and he would have gotten to experience a pressure cooker game at the MCG, which is invaluable. Instead, he goes and racks up high 20 disposals off halfback in the twos last week, and then this week the SANFL had a bye because of the state game. Now, it's exactly that sort of selection strategy that annoys the hell out of me, because Wayne Miller is clearly, apart from probably half a game a couple of weeks ago, he's clearly out of touch. Right? He's unfortunately, because of his injuries, he has not, met the levels that he was at previously. We've got a young lad who's already been shifted out of the middle to accommodate Lockie Murphy in the twos, who's been playing well off halfback, who gets an opportunity because of an injury, and instead of him getting selected, we selected a bloke who's not part of our next premiership. And that's exactly, Brownie, what I'm talking about. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's generally the problem that I see is that they're not utilising the players in the twos that have got potential. We're just trotting out the same players all the time, and it's really quite frustrating that with that attitude we're not developing enough young players. Like you said, Charlie Edwards could have had a couple of games under his belt. What an experience to play on the G. It would have been fantastic for his development. Now the question is he going to get a game before the end of the year, or when he gets the chance to push Miller out, is it going to be Brodie Smith that comes back again? I think we just want him to be proactive, because we're trotting out the same results against the better sides as we were last year. We're not seeming to make any progress. So if we're not making progress, something has to change.
It's been forecast for a week that it was going to be a wet game against Collingwood. I saw bloody news articles saying that the East States were going to get hammered by rain. So it wasn't a surprise that it was going to be a wet game. Yet we go in with our tall forward line and leave a bloke like Luke Pedler behind, who would have been absolutely perfect for those conditions. We start Sam Berry as a sub, who is absolutely ready-made for those conditions. Like, it seems to me that there is a formula, and he sticks to it, and that's what we're going to get. And unless there's a forced change through injury, there's no change. Mac?
I think you're being a bit kind to him, mate. I think you're being a bit kind. I mean, has he? No, seriously, has he got the ability to actually see what we actually need? I mean, to play Murphy all of last year, for example, that was. I mean, that Murphy. If you no premiership team would ever have a Murphy in it. I mean, so look, if you try to get your team. Somebody said in the chat, Nick's loves to play his favourites, and that's 100% how I feel about how he does his selections. I'm not talking about the automatics. There's a lot of automatics in the team.
I don't know whether it's favourites, Mac. I honestly think... Sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's down to trust. I think it's down to trust. And I want to follow that on with the fact that we rocked up to the same venue playing the same team that we've struggled against the last 3 or 4 years, and there was no innovation, there was no strategy, there was no change in the game plan. There was a small soft tag on Nick Dacos. Meanwhile, brother Josh is getting 963 possessions off half-back. We played up and down the line the whole freaking game until the last 10 minutes when we needed to score. And then, oh, shit, look what happened. We opened it up and we started to score. He has a game plan that is set according to a lack of trust in the team because he doesn't dare have an open game. That's how I see it.
Yeah, well, watching the game on telly, and one of the commentators I thought made a very astute point, is the fact that Collingwood, they play around the boundary as well, to a certain point. But at a certain point, which is probably around about centre wing, they don't go around the boundary. They actually line up with a straight line between where they are and the goals. So they're actually heading towards the middle gradually as they get closer up forward. And that point is made, and I said, oh, what's pretty close here? And they do that. We actually stayed too long around the boundary, right, and which means you usually end up in the forward pocket. Somebody in the chat says, well, both teams played down the line. We did. Both teams did play down the line. The variation that Collingwood do that we don't is that they bring it back towards the middle, not like 90 degrees, but at a slight angle, so that once you keep that line going down, once it gets down about the half-forward line, you're about probably 20 or 30 metres in. So that's the difference, and which means that if they get the ball, it's a better scoring opportunity.
And I would actually dispute that Collingwood are a strictly around the boundary team. Brownie, I don't know whether you noticed, but particularly before the rain, they were continually changing lanes and switching at every opportunity. Whenever they turned over the ball at their half-back line, our half-forward line, they would immediately switch. They did it continually in the first half.
Yeah, they've got the capacity to do that. They do play along the wings, sort of along the line at certain times, and they certainly do it when they want to slow the game down and that kind of thing. But I think that, they were cutting back inside as well. And like Naka said, they do push it back inside earlier than we do. Like you said, we only really did it 10 minutes before the end of the game when it was out of desperation. We started taking risks, but that suggests that the players are told not to take risks in their general game style, and that's a real concern.
Half the time they're not even looking. And I'll tell you that I watched the first half again this afternoon, and I counted 13 times to 2 that Collingwood switched the ball compared to us in the first half. 13 times. I'm talking about a full across the ground. And yes, they went up the wing on the other side. They didn't. I'm not talking about cutting through the corridor, but they were dynamic switches. They weren't just little chips around and all the rest of it. They literally, as soon as they turned the ball over, they went lateral, and it was as plain as the nose on your face. Because what obviously you want to do is to try and spread the zone. At no stage, in my opinion, did we give McRae anything to think about. We didn't make ourselves difficult to play against at any stage during the game. We gave him what we always give him, and he dealt with it the way they always deal with it. Well,
I do think though, Fee, we did give him a little bit more bother than normal because we did have more opportunities than we normally have, and
that's on talent, Mac. That's on talent. Our team has improved. They got more games into them. We got a couple of recruits that are playing well.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but we didn't. What I'm saying is that in terms of game plan and strategy and how we play against them, we didn't do anything different. We didn't do anything different than what we always do against them.
Well, that I can't argue against that. No, it's just that we've got more talent, as you say, and which created more opportunities, which gave us more opportunity to blow them, which we did, unfortunately.
Have a look at some stats real quick. And the stats are quite even apart from one or two. So disposals 343 to 327 their way. Kicks relatively even. Disposal efficiency was even. We had 8 more inside 50s than they did. Obviously, they were more efficient inside 50. Marks inside 50 were pretty even. We won the centre clearances. We won stoppage clearances. We won hit-outs. Contested possession was even. They had more ball on the outside by about 23. Marks were around about even. Turnovers were 74 to 89 their way, so we turned the ball over obviously a lot more than they did because that was the source of half of their scores during the course of the match, unfortunately. And tackles pretty even. So not a lot in those base stats, but I'll give you a couple of others. Where are we here? So they had a lot more possession after the first possession in a clearance, right? So, and Collingwood do this to us all the time. They let us crowd the pardon me. They let us crowd the contest, so we get numbers in at the contest, and they will not commit too many numbers to the contest, and then they are always on the outside waiting for the chop out or the intercept, the handball out or whatever. And that's in these stats here. They got a lot more possession out of this, like the second possession out of clearance. The other thing that I noticed, 10 goals, 7 out of turnovers. So they hurt us on turnovers. We kicked 7 goals, 1 out of turnovers. But also they were able to turn the ball over a lot more and get repeat 50s than us. So a lot of it was down to our ball security. And when you consider that we were kicking up and down the line, and when you consider that usually our uncontested possession count is high, and yet we were 23 down, or whatever it was, 23 down, that's indicative of us just kicking to contests, kicking to 50-50s. At no stage did we try to really have any sort of ball security on transition. We didn't try to take the inside 45 or anything like that. We were just happy to kick to contest continually. Is that how you saw it?
I reckon there was a massive difference with the pressure that Collingwood brought to the table this week, and I don't think that we handled it well. If you look at our kicking out of defence, we did a lot of sort of dump kicks or kicks around the body without looking, that were sort of low trajectory kicks. If you're going to kick out of defence without looking, you at least want to kick it high so there's time for our players to get to a contest and at least make it a 50-50. But when you're kicking it low trajectory around your body and it's just landing in Collingwood guys' laps, that was really noticeable. I think that was just basically the step up in pressure from what we've been getting against most sides was significant. Their pressure was elite and we didn't deal with it.
Well, and yet it wasn't a high tackle count game, Brownie. and the pressure meter was rarely up above 180. So it was actually not as high pressure as a game like Gold Coast. I think it's got more to do with how Collingwood positioned themselves around the contested ball and also behind the ball. What do you reckon, Mac?
Well, 100%. What you just said. I mean, it's they are like an automated machine. They just know the right to go to the right places. We might have the ball coming out of the back line, so they're out of their. We might have the ball coming out of their forward line, and they are getting. They set themselves up so that they won't always stop us, but they will give themselves the maximum chance of stopping us. And they know where to go, where to be, and who goes what and who goes where. I mean, they're not a top team for no reason, and they don't necessarily have all the best personnel. They've got some outstanding players, and they've got some what I would call just your ordinary soldiers, like every other team has. But they play to a game plan, and it is. And as somebody says in the chat, they are well coached. They know exactly what they're going to do. They go where they're going to go, and that's how they beat you. They just beat you. I mean, it's a marginal amount, but that marginal amount is the difference between winning and losing. And in this case, I'd say, well, we actually added a third factor in this time, and that was the bad kicking for goal. But in terms of if you said who coached the best, you'd have to say that Collingwood coached the best, because they will always deny you the right to win the game. Just always do.
Well, does anyone know, Brownie, did you notice anyone particularly on Josh Dacos at any stage?
No, I noticed them moving around on Nick, but I think Josh got a pretty much free rein the whole game from what I could see. And I know his disposals were probably similar to Nick's, but he had a lot more kicks, higher ratio of kicks, and he was a bit more damaging than Nick. And I think that's just as a result of he had more time because we didn't put any time into him.
Yeah, good point.
You could see that happening in the first 10 or 15 minutes. Like, the first thing you would have done as a coach is gone out to Neil Bullen or Keys or whoever and say, look, you need to have an arm on Dacos because he's getting all the rebound 50s. He's driving all their attacks. And yet I didn't see any movement towards Josh Dacos at all.
No, you're right. I don't think they responded at any stage, really, unfortunately.
And yet Geordie Dawson has a fantastic first quarter. And what happens? McRae goes, oi, Scott Pendlebury, just go and stand on Geordie, and locked him down.
Yep, it's called coaching.
Sorry, Mac, were you going to say something?
I can't remember that. But I think that basically, I think Browdy said what I was about to say anyhow, and I think you did as well. We're talking about Josh Dacos, and really, I mean, if you're going to say we've identified a lot of factors, which is why we've lost game plan and all the rest of it. But even on an individual basis, Josh Dacos was worth gold to them, and because he's a Dacos, and they use the ball well, and so. But I can't tell you who was playing on Josh Dacos either, because he's always seemed to be on his own, which is astounding, really, because we can identify who was on Dawson. I can identify who was trying to some degree to restrict Nick. But I have no idea who that was on Josh Dacos. It just didn't show up because he seemed to be on his own all the time.
Now, I'm going to do something I haven't done for a while. So you guys just continue to talk for a second and I will get this set up because I think it's important.
All right. Well, Brownie, if you were the coach, what moves would you have made, mate?
I'm more interested in the personnel. If I was the coach, I think I definitely would have rested Tex because he clearly needs a break. If you look at Collingwood, they rested 4 players last week, and Pendlebury and Howe were 2 of those, and Howe had an absolute belter of a game. and was probably, the difference really, nullified Tex. Tex kicked one in the first quarter, but he basically owned him every other aerial contest he owned, to the point where Tex wasn't able to even nullify and bring the ball to the ground. I just hope this week that we give Tex a spell, because he's played, every game. And then that might give us the opportunity to bring a younger guy in, whether it's Sid or whether it's Pedler or whoever. But it's a perfect opportunity against a team that, I know West Coast won this week, but surely at home, we can try a few things and be a little bit creative and maybe get a benefit from giving someone else some minutes on the ground.
Well, Brownie, I gave you your chance and you absolutely nailed it, mate. 100% nailed it. I mean, Tex Walker was, when the selectors come out, I was amazed that Tex Walker was chosen. Now, having said that, when we later found out that the forecast was for it to be wet, I was doubly surprised. I thought, surely you would actually adjust to those weather conditions, because we can't have three tools on a wet day. Well, logically we can't. We can, according to the coach. And look, that is just sheer madness. And with Phil Thorpe used a gun. The conditions reduced him down to no goals. I mean, he got some possessions, but it was going to always be mainly the smaller guys who got the goals. Although somebody like Fogarty, who has got hands like a bloody vice and got the body to barge through, did very well. But they weren't screamers of the marks that he was taking. They were just physically strength a lot of time, or just getting in front. So I think you absolutely nailed it. We were definitely one tool too many, and we know who that tool was. It was Tex. He should not have played, and that would have given us somebody with a lot more flexible, a lot more mobile, and that could put depending on where they played, whether they shuffled players around or not. But there's probably two or three we could have brought in, and they probably would have performed they would have performed better than Tex, because he played very ordinary. So big tick, Brownie.
I've got myself set up here, so we'll do this in a second. I want to preface it by talking about our mindset, and I've already kind of touched on it with regards to his reticence to trust players and to have a daring game plan and to open the game up, etc., etc. And to my way of thinking, in any organisation, you'll have a leader that has a very big impact on the mindset of the staff or the players or the group that he's leading or she's leading. And to me, the way Matthew Nix coaches, the way he selects the team, it bears out in the way that we play our games, a very conservative way. Whenever we kick a high score, he immediately works to correct it, because he doesn't want us to be a high-scoring team. He wants us to be a bloody defensive team. So we go and kick, 15 or 16 goals and win a shootout, and all of a sudden he's trying to shut the thing down. But I want you to listen to a little bit of his press conference, and there are some words here that honestly, if I didn't value my TV so much, I would have pegged the remote straight through it in the first 30 seconds. So let's just have a listen to this, if I've done it right.
Guys, they can keep getting in these close ones. Well, they're a very good team. They're a good team that we respect and probably understand. It's always going to be a tough game, and if you don't quite get it right,
they're a good team. We know they're a good team, and we know if we don't get it just right, we're not going to win the game. To me, he has said they're a good team every fucking game that we've played this year. Win, lose or draw. And someone referred to Port Adelaide in this press conference later on, and his first thing was, they're a very good midfield. if you go into with a mindset of we're playing against a really good opposition, and if we don't get everything right, we won't win. What do you think's going to happen when a bloke's lining up for goal from 40 metres out with a wet ball with an opportunity to put us in front? You both have led people. What do you think? And then I'll tell you what I think.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, all the people that were responsible to me, I was always talking positivity, not negativity, always, in the sense of wanting to be the best. That we are the best. We are good. We're a great team. That was always my approach to everything.
Yeah, I think his comment about if we don't get everything right, we're not going to win, that's just a pretty negative statement, and it sort of suggests that he's not giving the players the enough rope to show the creativity and actually express themselves and actually play their natural game, because they're too scared if they make a mistake. I just think it's a really negative mindset that he's come out with.
To me, if you're sitting in the change rooms and you're listening to a bloke say to you, we're going to play a really conservative game plan, we're going to go up and down the line, so I don't want you to have any flair, I want you to be disciplined, I want you to control, compact the ground so we don't open it up too much, and because that we've got to do everything right here, because if we don't do everything right, we probably won't win this game. Every time someone makes a mistake, he goes, oh shit, I've just lost us the game. He doesn't give the players a license to go out and win the game. He doesn't set up a game plan to win the game. He sets things up not to lose the game. It's a completely negative mindset. He wants to shut the game. He doesn't like high scoring. He doesn't like open gameplay. He will not take on Collingwood and give them something to think about and make us difficult to play against. He's just a Ken Hinkley, work harder for a longer kind of guy and get everything right. Now, on a wet day with a young team against probably the best team in the comp at the moment, you're not going to get everything right. So what you want to be doing is telling your team, take chances. No one's gonna bloody shoot you in the head if you take a chance and it doesn't come off. Show some flair, run. Take risks. Try the 45s. Open the game up, etc., etc., etc. But we don't do that, and he's never done that. He doesn't do that in selection. He doesn't do that in game plan, and it reflects in the players when they are in a pressure situation and they've got to execute. They are not executing with that positive message in their heads. They're executing with a, shit, I better not stuff this up message in their heads. Do you understand what I mean?
I totally understand what you're talking about, because going back to my business life, but with everybody that reported to me, I always told them they are their own manager, and they had parameters of what we wanted to achieve. They had to go and work the detail out themselves how to get there. But it was what was not flexible were the parameters, in the sense of what we wanted to achieve and the time frames that we had to achieve it with. And with players, the same thing can apply. There's a certain thing you want your forwards to achieve, or your backmen to achieve, your mids to achieve, and there'll be parameters in which they play within. And some of them will be strict, some of them will be flexible. And but I don't think that applies with Nicks. I just don't think so. Because I'm sure with Collingwood, their coach would give them. They have a game plan, but they've got parameters. What they have to do, they have to work in between those parameters. And because obviously the ball's not going to come in the same angle every time, and it's not going to be the same player every time. Of course, there's differences all the time, but you adjust to that because you've got to, what the end result has to be, and you work it out in between what the parameters you've given are, and that's called a game plan.
Well, what's the first thing the first thing I noticed, Brownie, was McCreery in the middle. He obviously was worried about Rankin's pace. So he puts his fastest player, he hasn't played in the midfield all season, he's a winger, puts him in the middle on Rankin.
Move.
Like this is the top team playing against a team that they've had the wood on for years, and he still deems it appropriate to pay some attention to Rankin. Did you notice that?
Yeah, because he knows that if Rankin, gets going, Rankin's a confidence player. If he gets going in the first quarter, he can cut you up and make you hurt. And he actually, he had a game plan to try and stop that happening. And I think Rankin got that one goal in the first quarter with that intercept, and that was fantastic. But generally he was shut down fairly well. I think going back to what you're saying, Rob, with Nix, it's just purely trust is the main thing. He doesn't trust his players. And while you've got that mindset, it's really hard to get a different result. They're just going to do the same stuff every week because they're just playing for their spot in the side.
Yeah, I've felt this for a long time, that it's a trust issue with him. And the younger players must feel it. The blokes like Berry and Draper and Schoenberg and Dowling and Edwards and these blokes in the twos and Pedler, and they've all had their good games and they've all had their bad games. But our target should have been, and I believe realistically should have been, 2027. If you look at the age of our list and the age profile of our list, 26 and 27 should have been when we were really coming. And everything that he should have done up until then should have been about growing the list and building the list and getting games into blokes that he thinks going to be right. So if you consider that's the case, because we're not doing anything this year, we'll finish middle of the table. We might squeak into the 8, we might not. But blokes like Brodie Smith, Lockie Murphy, Tex Walker are not going to be part of it. Rory Laird may not be part of it. To that extent, Wayne Miller may not be part of it on form, at least. So he's not thinking about 26, 27. He's thinking about next week. Now, is that a club edict? Is that him looking after his job? I don't know. But we identified it, didn't we, Macca, about halfway through 2023 when we had that good start, and all of a sudden, instead of playing rash and all that in the middle, we flicked the switch back and we went back to Crouch and Sloan and all the rest of it. And ever since we've had a sniff of making finals, the development of young players has stopped in its tracks. We had seen Dowling.
Yeah, sadly, that's true.
That's about right. That's about the timing, isn't it, Mac?
Yeah, and poor old Billy Dowling, I don't know what that poor guy's done wrong. I mean, he's done well every time he's been given an opportunity, but he doesn't get an opportunity. I feel so sorry for him.
Well, and there's a few like him, mate. There's a few like him. And the trouble is, I've had this discussion with people and, they're just not up to it. And it's like, well, how the freak would you know? How would you know? Giving one game here or there to a bloke is not going to tell you whether he's up to it. I mean, Sid Draper didn't set the world on fire in his first 4 weeks. You're going to say he's not up to it? Of course you're not. But here he is racking up. Like, Sid Draper would have been great as a sub this week, I reckon. It would have been almost the perfect sub to come on with fresh legs and a hard edge and great second efforts around the ball. Would have been the perfect sub to come on. But we will play Tex instead, shall we?
Yeah, no, that wasn't a good move. That was probably almost. You could almost even argue that could have been almost a match costing move, actually, depending on how the replacement for Tex played. Because really, I know Tex got one goal, but overall, no pressure from him at all, and he didn't have a lot of touches. How many did he have? He only had about.
Well, I mean, he was off after half time.
5 or something like that. Really,
it wasn't
not too many
huge.
anyhow.
It wasn't huge. I can tell you, Tex Walker had 3 kicks, 2 handballs.
That's 5 there.
Yeah.
I knew it was very low.
Let me just play a little bit more of Nick's presser.
The outcome's not going to be what you're after, and we didn't. Yeah, we had a couple of costly moments in the game that, when you look back on it, in a game that's really hard to score in because of conditions, those costly errors become even more costly. 50-metre penalties just outside to give them a goal, or a mark on the goal line right on the siren. Just small things that we know we've got to get right if we want to beat the best side in the comp.
Kicking yourselves a bit over.
Now, he's not necessarily wrong with that. We made some stupid errors. The 50 that we gave away was stupid. Some poor positioning, etc., some bad turnovers, all the rest of it. But he goes straight from, this is a game where we knew we had to get everything right, to pointing out everything that the players did wrong. And that's the other thing about Matthew Nicks that is consistent. He always, always, always blames the players. Always blames the players.
Yeah, he does. He's never come out and say, I did this wrong, or I did that wrong, or I should have done this, or I should have done that. Yeah, we just weren't good enough.
Like Brownie, I am 50 seconds into his press conference, and I could have written what he said, because he says it every freaking week.
Yeah, he's a one-trick pony, I think. But you're not going to get anything different, and that's the thing. We persevere with him. We're going to get more of the same. The only thing that might happen at the end of this year is he might be forced to play some younger players because 4 or 5 guys might retire. But it won't be something proactive that he's done. That's just going to be circumstance. I'd rather we did it halfway into this year and have those guys with 10 or 12 games under their belt when we start the season next year. But it's not going to be the case. It's going to be wait and see what happens at the end of the year. We might make finals, like you said. We might not. But it's pretty hard to see us being competitive in the finals.
You're very, very optimistic about blokes retiring. Do you know the last person who retired from the Adelaide Crows?
No.
Rory did?
Luke Brown.
No, Rory's...
Luke Brown was the last person to put his hand up and say, I'm going to retire. Every other bastard has had retirement forced on them. Like you're thinking Rory Sloane, Macca.
Yeah,
he didn't retire. He didn't bow out gracefully. Someone had to near gouge his eye out to freaking get him to retire, and Nicks would have happily kept playing him. Brodie Smith kept playing. Scott Thompson kept playing. Richie Douglas kept playing. All these bastards keep playing because why wouldn't you?
Burlow.
Yeah,
that's before his time.
Yeah, but it's a club. It's a club-wide thing, and this is the last point that I'll make about Nicks, because I don't want to bore people, because I know we talk about Nicks all the time. But the last thing that I'll say about it is that we've endured Matthew Nicks, and the club has accepted Matthew Nicks's performance for 6 years, and the club hasn't won a premiership for 30 years. The last time we had a bloke come into the club and say things that made you think, well, shit, I bet you there's a few behind the scenes or at board level or whatever that would have felt a bit uncomfortable about that, was Phil Walsh. The bloke before that was Malcolm Blight. So this is a club issue, in my opinion. This is not just Matthew Nicks. Matthew Nicks is who he is. He's a lovely bloke, and I'm sure the players love him and all the rest of it. And he is who he is, and that's fine. It's not up to him to say whether he should coach or not. He's been appointed a coach, and he's doing the job the way he wants to do it. That's fine. But why has our club tolerated him for 6 years? Why did we tolerate Neil Craig for 1,000 years, where we're more or less the same sort of shit, playing like robots with no flair and no individuality, just like sticking to the script? This is a club thing. This is about the club being conservative, in my opinion. It is beyond just Matthew Nicks, because a less conservative club would not have extended Nicks the last time and would not be tolerating this right now. Even though we're sixth, doesn't matter. They would be looking more objectively at what's going on, in my opinion. What do you reckon?
Very good point. Very good point you raise about it being a club thing, because if you go right back to that period in the 2000s, early 2000s, there, we stuck with the same guy there, and if they'd had a coach that had a bit of flair and a coach that had a little bit of imagination about him, and that, I just believe our team was good enough in that period to win a premiership, and then we get up to we lost the 2017 premiership again. It's just, I don't know, that we just went, well, Brett Burton got that bloody mind mob that come in, and we're focusing on stupid things rather than just playing bloody good football and winning a premiership, which we should have done. So I think there's two eras that we've blown it, and it's really on the people that we had steering the team at the time. So, yeah.
I just feel like there's a. I mean, Walsh was brought in because Rashido was so moved about what he said at I forget whose funeral it was. It might have been that Port Adelaide lad. Someone's funeral, and he was so moved by what he heard that he immediately thought that's a coach I'd want to play under. And it was a good call by Rashido, because Walsh came into the club and said things that would have made a lot of people uncomfortable about elite standards and having, grown-up conversations and all that sort of stuff. And it was very evident that, they couldn't keep that going once Phil passed away. And we didn't hear any more about elite standards and man conversations and all that sort of shit. We went all the way back to the corporate speak, and the only other bloke who's had the nuts to come in and shake the club up has been Malkin, and that's because he had a mandate. He had a mandate from the board to do it. So until we could sack Matthew Nicks tomorrow, but what would be the point if the club itself is going to choose someone with similar qualities because that's what the club wants? The people who are making the selection, that's what appeals to them. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I totally understand, but surely somewhere along the line they've got to recognise that other teams are winning premierships and other teams have got certain types of coaches, and if you look at their characteristics, probably if you ever look at premiership coaches, they're not all that different. They might have different mannerisms and different ways, but they've got one thing, that they really have got a real good game plan, and they've got the buy-in from their players, and they pick the right players. So basically, there's not a million things that a coach can do. They've got the limitations, but Nicks hasn't even got the basic ones right. So, they're successful coaches. They make sure they have a very good game plan. And I'm really thinking of Hardwick when I'm thinking about that. I mean, the guy got three years in a row. He won a premiership. And that's because he had a very good game plan. His players bought into it, and they played it the way he wanted to play it, and they won three premierships.
Well, my point is, Matt,
this guy's not going to.
No, so go, mate.
I was just going to finish. Nicks hasn't got any plan that's going to win a flag, and I think we probably should give away Bashley, but because we've been out too long. But we're never going to win a flag with this bloke as coach. That's 100%. Right? I'm sure of that. Sure.
I agree with you, and the problem that I have is that, I mean, it would be wrong to say that it's Matthew Nicks' fault that Isaac Rankin misses 3 shots for goal. It would be wrong to say that. However, if you're in a workplace, and this is their workplace, right? If you're in a workplace where you are, where there's not a lot of internal tension or pressure. There's not a huge amount of accountability. I've not seen any senior player get dropped for performance since Matthew Crouch 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was. Like, there's not a huge amount of accountability. Maybe Rolly O'Brien, but they only do that to kick him up the arse, and they do it for a week. Like, so there's not a huge amount of accountability. There's a lot of get the arms around the boys and all the rest of it. And I think that was great for 2020, 2021, when we had to regroup and we had a very, very young list and all the rest of it. But we're past that now. We need a harder edge. We need accountability. It's no longer acceptable for Darcy Fogarty to line up in a forward pocket with a set shot left foot snap that he's kicked 1,000,000 times.
Oh, yeah. Jesus,
and miss and belly the ball out of bounds on the full. It's no longer acceptable for Ben Keys in the first quarter to line up for a set shot on his natural foot from 15 metres out and not even make the distance. Like, it's no longer acceptable for Rankin to continue to miss pressure set shots. Okay? There are so many things. Like, it's no longer acceptable for Nankervis to just play off his man for the first half an hour of the game. There has to be accountability, in my opinion. It's no longer acceptable for Rankin to be a flashy midfielder that has no defensive accountability. Those sorts of things. And I don't think Matthew Nicks has got it in him, but I guess, Brownie, what I'm saying is I don't know whether the club has got it in it to actually knock on Nix's door and go, you got to start pulling rank on these boys. They got to sharpen up. Do you reckon?
Well, it doesn't sound internally like there's a lot of pressure on him. It sounds like there's a lot of support. I don't know how they set their metrics for performance and that kind of thing. I was sort of hoping with Neil Baum coming into the club, there might be some more accountability and some metrics in place to actually keep him a bit more honest. But yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion of Neil Baum in terms of how much influence he's going to have?
Well, I know that he's working remotely. He's not in Adelaide, so he attends board meetings same way we're doing this podcast over video conferencing. His role is somewhat diluted because Rashido's still there, so I assume they're in handover mode, I guess, because Roo is technically still the footy director. I would hope that, like, Neil Baum made a very stirring speech at the AGM about accountability and all that, and I would hope that he is looking on from a distance without being affected too much by the club culture and saying to John Olsen, something's got to change. Now I'm hopeful. I have a feeling that John Olsen, having dealt with Theberton, has got Davis and Baum in because he's now turned his attention to the team. I'm hopeful. It would be out of character for Neil Baum to tolerate anything other than high standards, and he's had success at every club he's been to. Geelong, Collingwood, Richmond, every club. So you would hope that continues, and maybe he's just, letting it play out for now. I don't know. Maybe Nix has got a mandate of 10 games or 15 games before they sit down and talk about it. I don't know. I have a lot of hope that Neil Baum will wield some weight. I don't know, Mac. Do you think he's going to get overridden by the bloody stodgy club stalwarts?
Well, those type of things have to. First of all, Nix has got a contract. That's the first problem, and the second problem is that, of course, And the second problem is that to sack Nicks, you would need the wish and the will of the board for that to happen. It might well be that others down the line or above Nicks, but not in a position to make that decision, can recommend that to the board. But then it's up to the board to do it. And
Barnes on the board.
When I look at, I know he is. So he's one board member who would put it up. Then it's up to whether the others support that or not. And I don't really have a lot of faith in our board that they would do it.
Do you reckon our board would be strong enough to go against someone as big as Neil Baum? Not, particularly because Baum would have Olsen's backing.
Well, if Baum got Olsen's backing, then I would think the others would crumble and go along with it.
100%.
That would probably be the key. That would be the key. If Barnes was to recommend that and Olsen supported it, yes, it would happen. But it needs that. That's the level it's got to be at.
What do you reckon, Brownie?
Hopeful that if he's got Olsen's support, hopeful that he can make an impact. But yeah, I suppose time will tell, and it might be a bit like you said. We're not going to see the full impact of Barm until Rashido's gone.
Yeah, maybe. All right, look, let's not dwell on that, but I just wanted to put that to you guys to see what you thought, because to me it's becoming obvious that it's like, yes, of course, Matthew Nicks runs the show on match day, but there just seems to be a wider problem at club level, in my opinion. Now, don't forget, if you're in Discord, stick your hand up if you want to have something to say. I'm sure you blokes out there have got opinions. You're smashing away at your keyboards there, so come on if you want. And also those listening to us on YouTube, smash your comments in the chat, and I'll be sure to keep an eye on them so that we can address anything you guys raise as well. So off Nicks, there was obviously some down performances. I mentioned Luke Nankervis earlier. I thought he was really disappointing earlier. My opinion is that maybe it's time for him to have a bit of a spell.
Yeah, look, he the one thing I will say about him, he's got tons and tons of courage. The one thing he doesn't lack is courage. There are a couple of times there he was in a position where he could have really got smashed, but he's still back to take the ball.
Lockie Murphy's got courage too.
No, and I was about to say that. Yeah. I'm not going to fall for it. I'm not going to say that. Back to Nankervis. I like the fact he's got courage, but you are right. He's sort of gradually playing himself out of form. So I would say, and so somebody pointed out, he played 31 games. It's time to show more, and I agree with that. I do agree with that. So, it probably is. Look, if you've got to be serious about that, you've got standards you've got to reach, that we want to win a flag, and the only way we're going to do that is if players play at a certain standard, and you know that he can play at that standard, but he's not. So go back and get that form up, and then we'll bring you back again. So I've got no problem with that.
Yeah, look, he was directly responsible for the first two Collingwood goals. Brownie, and like he'll always put in, but he's got into this maddening habit of trying to break the first tackle and to evade.
Yeah.
And that's starting to become a problem.
Yeah, I think early in his career, he showed some signs of being pretty good at evading tackles, and against probably the lesser sides, he was walking around tackles and doing it pretty well. But the last few weeks, he's been getting caught where he's had an opportunity to get a quick handball. He's decided instead of giving the first give, he'll try and evade the tackle, and he's been done holding the ball a few times. So I think, I still think he's got the talent, but I think a spell back in the twos to get his confidence back would be a good idea, because he's certainly showing a few signs, and even just concentration. And that one where who was it? The Port player that kicked the first goal. The Collingwood player, Houston. I mean, to not stand on the mark and just give him free rein to walk up an extra 7 or 8 metres and kick a goal from 50 when he would have been kicking from 55. That was just complete laziness, or he just wasn't thinking, or whatever. And yeah,
I think he's a bit
not good enough.
I think he's a bit confused because he's actually playing. He actually started up forward, and he's a halfback flanker, and he hasn't played halfback flank all year because we've picked Miller, as PJ Crows in the chat pointed out. And I don't think he necessarily understands his role, and I think he's a bit confused. And as PJ rightly says in the chat, he has suffered from Miller's selection when Nankervis deserved selection first up, and it should have been Miller forcing his way back into the side. So, but all that
particular
go on, yeah.
Just on that one that Brownie spoke about, the Crows seem to have a policy of not standing the mark. If you go back, I think it's 5.
Yeah, but not on the 50, not on the 50.
Not for a shot for goal.
No, actually, well, this is what I'm going to say. I was going to say that we seem to have a policy of dropping back 5 metres so that we can move sideways. But having said that, if Nankervis was thinking that at that particular occasion, that is absolute insanity because, as Brownie pointed out, he's given him that 5 extra metres to get closer to kick the goal. Instead of kicking from 55.
That's what I'm saying. He's confused. He's playing in a different role. I just think he's been stuffed around, which is what we've done to a lot of our young players. We've stuffed them around, played them out of position. He's a halfback flanker.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, or a wingman. He's played reasonably well on a wing as well. But I just don't. Well, at the moment, I do think that he probably needs a spell anyhow.
Guy man saying in the chat, Miller is the rumour is that Miller is up for a 3-year contract extension. I'd just about hang it up if they gave him 3 years. I can't believe that. Why would you give Wayne Miller a 3-year extension?
Well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'd give him maybe a 1-year extension, but not a 3.
Yeah, a one year to give him another year back off his last injury. But Jesus. Anyway, that's not the point. So, I think Nankervis looks like he just needs a bit of a recalibration in the twos or to be played in the right position. The other one I want to talk about is Alex Neil-Bullen, because I expected more, to be honest, and he did sweet FA against Collingwood, and I see him, there's a lot's been said about his leadership, and I see him talking to the players on the field and pointing here and pointing there and all the rest of it. I haven't seen him get a lot of the ball. Brownie?
Yeah, he put a bit of time into Dacos. I think they were rotating players through Dacos, but he put a bit of time into Dacos, but you couldn't say he was overly effective, really. And in terms of being proactive, yeah, he didn't really do much. I don't know what his stats were, but he didn't seem to do much on the weekend. He's had a couple of good games, but yeah, I'd probably have been a bit underwhelmed overall. I thought he might be, he's the one that's played in the premiership. He's got a lot more games under his belt. I probably thought there'd be more consistency with him, whereas the other two, I'm open to the fact they're going to have a down game occasionally. But yeah, he has been a little bit underwhelming.
Yeah, I want to make a comment about that. He's been, the last 2 games in a row, he's been used as a tagger. The guy, I've never seen him, I watch every game, and I've never seen him play in Melbourne as a tagger. I mean, he's played umpteen bloody game for Melbourne, and he never played as a tagger. He was always that guy, you give him a run on the ball occasionally as a midfielder, or basically then you have him in the forward line, and somebody said he did tag the D's. Nah, not what he's being asked to do here. And also if he did, he was much younger. And the guy plays his half forward flank to perfection, in my opinion, and that's where he plays. He hasn't got the capacity to be a tagger because he hasn't got the pace to be a tagger. Tagger's got to be not as quick as the guy he's tagging. He's got to be a little bit quicker than the guy he's tagging because he's got to get him all the time. So it's just an absolute insanity from Nicks to use Neil Bullen as a tagger. It's insanity. Now, you'd bring in Bond. Bond is I would have brought in Bond for this particular game. I think he's perfect for this game.
Could have done worse.
And
at the very least, you bring Benny Keys up on Dacos. He wasn't getting any of the ball.
That was the other alternative. That I was going to say. Benny Keys, if you could play it the side as it is, but if you, I would have picked Bond for this particular game. I just think he would have been perfect for it. But having said that, he wasn't, and I would never, ever have used Neil Bullen as a tagger. I knew it was disaster right from the word go. He just hasn't got the pace to go with the type of player that he's being asked to tag. That's insanity. That's really just like saying to Rankin, we're going to use you as a ruckman this week. You'd have the same success. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Bad coaching.
All right. No, we're not talking about the coach anymore.
I'm sorry, but
no, it is. I 100% agree with you, mate. 100% agree with you. Like, that's why I raised him. It's the other piece of bad coaching is Josh Rochelle did his usual get 12% of total CBAs for 3 clearances. He's an absolute clearance machine, and yet he got 3 CBAs, 2 in the first and 1 in the second, or something like that. What the hell? Why?
Nixie's not listening to you every week, is he? Because it's been coming up week in, week out. And when he gets opportunity, he just gets the ball.
Every freaking time. He is a clearance machine. Okay, tell me I'm not stupid.
Oh, you're not stupid. It's absolutely frustrating. I just don't know why he doesn't use him a lot more. I think that, in fact, to me, it would be compulsory to use him as part of the rotations because he's very good at the clearances. If you went back and looked at since he's been with us, at the number of times he's attended CBAs, and then worked out the percentage of when he's had an opportunity to get the ball, when he was anywhere near it, he gets it and he clears it and he uses it quite well when he comes out of it.
His clearance to CBA ratio is the best at the club since he's been at the club.
I would say they'd have to be right.
No, it is right. I've done the numbers.
Well, I totally believe
I'll bring them up next week.
Yeah, I totally believe you, 100%. And I would be using him all the time. Half forward flank and a run on the ball and like 50% of clearances. Just use him that way. And even if you just use him at the clearance and then swap over and put him back to half forward flank. But he is good at what he does there. He played as a kid. When he played all these footballs as a kid, he played on ball. Yep. So this is not just an experiment. You're playing a guy in a position that he's used to playing, that he's played all his junior footy in. So, and when he's been given the opportunity at senior level, he's been very good. So, again, it's another. Yeah, we're doing Nick's bashing again, but the guy just forces us to do it.
Well, as we said last week, surely it's a no-brainer that we have Rankin and Rochelle Brownie swapping forward. It frees up another spot for a Sid Draper or a Luke Pedler or someone like that as well to come in. I just don't understand why that obvious rotation isn't evident to the coaching panel.
Yeah, and I also like the idea of maybe Rankin spending a little bit more time in the forward line because I think he's dangerous and I think he just finds opportunity to score. And likewise for Rochelle, it's really hard when you're playing in the forward line and the ball's not coming in. Like on the weekend, the entries weren't clean. They weren't hitting targets. They were just bombing the ball in, and it's difficult for players like Rochelle to really get involved. So that's the perfect time to say, in a game like that, push him through as at least once or twice a quarter as a minimum. And that direct swap with him and Rankin makes perfect sense because they're both ball magnets in the forward line as well. So, yeah, I don't understand it. He's obviously happy doing it because he's performing every time he gets the chance. So why they can't see that and use him more, I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, it was instructive that last week when we wanted to score, the first thing he did was put Rash in the middle and put Rankin forward, and we got 3 goals in 10 minutes and closed out the game, and then he shut it down and let him back in. But if you make that move for 10 minutes and it nets you 3 goals, two off the boot of Rankin, aren't you thinking to yourself, well, shit, that worked, we'll do that again?
Yeah, you should be learning from it.
You would think.
You would think.
Oh, man. I've got a glass desk and I swear to God I nearly broke it then. All right. Let's move on to some relative positives. I thought Darcy Fogarty was our most effective forward for the day. He was working hard, got up and down the ground. He only had the 11 disposals, but he took 7 marks and kicked 4-1. In those conditions from a big forward, I don't think you can ask much more than that. Brownie, can you?
Nah, he was really good. And he took a couple of marks up the ground as well. He was copping a fair bit of heat from his direct opponent too.
Yeah,
like they were going at each other all day. But yeah, he took some good clutch marks and his finishing, his finishing's just the lead. Apart from that, that one kick around the corner that didn't go perfectly. That tight goal that he kicked about a 70-degree angle from the left pocket was that the left pocket or right pocket, whatever it was. That was just a beautiful kick. And that last his 4th goal straight ahead. But that's showing Rankin it's not that hard to kick one straight through the middle from 40 metres. And it didn't deviate. But he was just really good value. He didn't get a lot of the ball, but everything he did well.
Yeah,
and he was really value for money.
He was really the only Crows forward leading up. I didn't see Riley lead up a hell of a lot. They seemed to play Thilthorpe a bit deeper, but Darcy was really leading up.
Well, I think I like the way he played Fog because I thought that he actually forced them to kick it 2 times. The way as you said with his lead, and I think for value for money, I had him as our second best player. I mean, when you got a forward in wet conditions, gets 11 possessions. He took 7 marks. He kicked 4 goals. That's an outstanding value from a forward in a very tight game, and there weren't a lot of goals. Yeah, I thought he was outstanding.
Yep. The other bloke I want to give a shout out to that doesn't often get mentioned in dispatches is Mitch Hinge. He had 21 touches, 11 contested possessions, 3 inside 50, 7 intercepts, 300 metres gained, a couple of tackles. I felt like our defence struggled. I thought Josh Worrell struggled. Keane didn't have a lot. Michael Annie did well defensively on Elliott, but didn't get a lot of possessions himself. Miller has struggled, obviously, but I thought Mitch Hinge really stood out, not only defensively, but also getting us moving the other way.
He was easily the best of the back line for possession in terms of getting the ball. Like you said, Michael Annie was trying to be a negator on Elliott, and Butts never gets a lot of the ball. So, but I thought Hinge played a little bit on the edge. There were times I thought, they were going to get him, but no, he just got his kick away. And overall, he was definitely the most effective in the back lines.
But what you just said there was key, Macca, just before you chime in, Brownie. Sometimes he plays on the edge. That's exactly what I was saying at the beginning of the podcast. We want blokes to do that. Take a chance, take a risk, chance your arm. There's a couple of times he let the ball get behind him and he was back on it quick smart and cleaned up his mess. I'd rather Hinge's game with a couple of mistakes and some really aggressive football versus Wayne Miller or Rory Laird chip it 20 metres sideways every freaking time. Brownie.
Yeah, and I think Hinge, he only had nine kicks and 12 handballs. I'd probably like to see the ratio a bit more on the kick side, but apart from the one kick that he just stuffed one kick and kicked it straight to the Collingwood player, apart from that, he was either generally hitting his targets or he was getting a lot of metres gained and moving the ball a good distance. But what you just said before about him, I think was crucial. A couple of times when his first effort he didn't get the ball, his second effort was really good, and he'd actually get the ball with his second effort. And one of them where he got the ball on the ground and stood up and ran away and kicked it was bloody unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember.
But that's just his mindset. It's just his mindset's attack all the time, and we definitely don't want to take that away, because I think him and Worrell, that's their most positive attribute, is the fact that they're attacking, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I thought Worrell struggled a bit with Membry, actually. It was surprising. He has a game like that occasionally, but Membry made him pretty accountable, and he's a bloody strong unit, Membry, too. Like, underrated strength-wise, I reckon. And Josh just found it a little bit tougher, I think.
Well, yeah, look, he was out of his weight division, there's no doubt about that, and probably out of his height division as well. But overall, I rated his game at least reasonable because, as I say, he was playing on a bloke that was much, much bigger than him, and I don't think Membry hurt us that much, Fiend.
Early, not so much late, but certainly in the first half, he got off the chain a little bit.
Yeah, so somebody said in the chat quite, and it's actually true, that Membry used his physicality on Worrell quite a bit, and a lot of it was illegal as well, because there's a lot of hands in the back that sent Worrell flying, and which he didn't get a free for, at least a couple of them.
Yeah,
anyway.
but you've got to be better than that, Macca. You've got to be better than that. There was one specific example where Membry gave Geordie Butts a little bit of a shove in the goal square. I think it was Membry. I'm sure it was Membry, actually. And Isaac Cumming actually should have come across the top and killed that, but he didn't. But the commentators made it, I think it was Gary Lyon, who I could hardly listen to, he was so biased. But one thing he did say in that contest was that Geordie Butts got airborne. He went to jump to go for the ball. And it was exactly the wrong thing to do, because as soon as you're airborne, you're vulnerable. You can get pushed off the line very, very easily, and that's exactly what Membry did. Now, an AFL standard big to tall defender should know that. That's something that they should be training and match sim all the time. He needed to just have body on Membry and kill that contest. Why was he why was he jumping for the mark?
I remember that incident you were talking about very, very clearly, and you're right. You're right. He should have just been pushing back into Membry,
100%.
Rather than flying up, because that gives him a better chance of getting the ball going back. And also on top of that, it got a chance of getting some interference from Membry. We actually did get some when he was airborne, but still got nothing. But logically, you're right. It was a mistake on his part. He should have just backed right back. And a good backman just does that, backs into them, and his job is not even necessary to mark the ball, but it's to make sure that his opponent doesn't mark the ball. And the best way you can do that is always playing in front, and furthermore, and just make it, if you just crowd back on him, it makes it very difficult for him to mark the ball as well.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, Brownie? We don't actually have a defender in our coaching squad at the moment that I can think of.
Who's the defensive coach?
I think it's Burns, isn't it? Or is he forward this year?
Oh. No, Burns is forward this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but no, I don't think we do.
Homsch.
Oh, well, Homsch was a defender.
Oh, yeah, he's a defender. So
yeah, no, that's wrong on me then. I forgot about him. They should just be taught that sort of stuff. That's basic. But anyway, look, I actually, like, on the umpires, I actually thought, Brownie, that we probably had the rub of the green in the first half. I didn't think the umpires were terribly good. I thought they missed quite a bit. It was not so much what they paid, but what they missed. There was a few encroaching in the protected zones. There was a couple of front-on contacts, that sort of stuff that they could have paid. But to me, if you're going to play away against Collingwood at the MCG, you've got to be prepared to be squeaky clean, in my opinion. And that doesn't include not throwing the ball back on the full, or knocking it out of someone's hands, or like it's never going to happen, because you have 50,000 screaming Collingwood fans that are going to influence the umpire, right?
That's right, and like that that one with Darcy Fogarty, that was just, I mean, unfortunately, he used to do that a lot. He's really improved in that regard, and he doesn't do it as often now, but he just has that rush of blood occasionally. And the Peatling 50 was just lack of concentration. They're the kind of things you just can't afford to do against the best team when you're playing on the G. Disappointing, but yeah, such is life.
Well, I was disappointed with a couple of decisions. The one where Miller went for a throw when it was absolutely a clear handball.
Definitely a handball.
And the decision wasn't played by the umpire close. It was played by one of the distant umpires, which was absolutely ridiculous. The one with Fogarty where he got 50 metres for grabbing him, I have no doubt that he thought Dawson touched the ball, because I played that in slow motion, and unfortunately you just don't see the very last frame, but it looks like Dawson got his fingers are back. So, and I think Fogg thought that it had been touched, which is why he grabbed it. It was a Cox, wasn't it? I think he grabbed. So,
I think
and that cost him a 50. So, I think it was just unfortunate. That one was just unfortunate, because I'm sure that he thought it was touched. So, but you're right. Overall, I mean, there's always going to be decisions to. There's one that also was played as a deliberate out of bounds, which was no way. It was, a player under great pressure and just not. There's no way it was deliberate. But having said that, you're quite right. You have to be prepared for the fact you're going to be slightly on the wrong side, but even in an even exhibition by the umpires, because of the crowd influence, because that happens at our oval as well.
Exactly.
We often get frees the other way around, that they're very, very marginal, but because the home crowd scream their guts out.
Yeah. Couple of others I wanted to talk about. Jake Saligo started very slow, but had a really good second half, in my opinion. Ended up with 23 disposals, 15 kicks, 8 handballs, 4 tackles, 5 clearances, 451 metres game. I think he only had maybe 7 or 8 possessions up to half time, I think. Jad, thanks, mate. 17 touches in the second half. So 6 possessions up to half time. He looked. The only thing that I'll say about Jake is that he lacks composure with his disposals. A lot of kicking around the body. A couple of times he burnt blokes going past because he was just slamming on the boot. I wonder whether he's still a year off having a true midfielder's engine, Brownie.
Yeah, possibly. And that's not such a problem as long as we run enough guys through the midfield and we don't try and use him too much.
Yeah. His
one thing I would say about his game, though, he kicked 2 goals under pressure when it mattered. Yes. And that was a sign of maturity. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, and it was, particularly seeing he had a very ordinary first half to come out in, and he could hold his head up high, that he had a good second half and had a real crack at it. So, yeah, good point.
Who else do we have there now? All right. So let's talk about Riley O'Brien. I'll hold my fire. Macca, go.
I'm going to be wrong no matter what I say here, Ben, on this one. I think.
No. Honest opinion.
Look, we know Robert is not the best ruckman in the world, and we know he's not the most flexible ruckman in the world. He's look, he tries his guts out with the limited ability that he's got. He certainly, I think he got more taps than Cox did. But Cox doesn't go to a teammate, and Roberts usually goes to the opposition. So, but I thought his performance around the ground, I thought he tried hard. He's got limited ability. He's got a big high engine, and he's got a big high want to succeed. He's got a big high want to do right, and he's got limited ability to do it with. And what I saw is that he gave 100% of what he got to give, which is probably isn't enough. So, but that's not his fault. He doesn't pick himself, and we don't have really a proper alternative. But I thought he put in 100%. But he doesn't have the tools.
Brownie?
I think he had 38 hit outs, so he was definitely like competing well with Cameron. As usual, I don't think a hell of a lot of his hit outs go to advantage, but I think the major thing around the ground, he only had 2 marks, but the frustration is he gets in positions where he gets first hands on the ball multiple times, especially in the back line, but he just doesn't clunk them. And that's the frustration where, you're really good ruckmen are taking 6 or 8 marks in a game and he's taken 2. I think he took 4 one game a few games ago, but I just don't think he does enough around the ground.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I thought his effort was outstanding, like particularly in the first half. He was more often than not the bloke that was chasing Collingwood players out of the clearance and that sort of stuff. He put in a lot of good efforts. Like you said, Macca, his absolute best is a rung below what you would want from an AFL first ruckman. And I thought in the conditions, that was probably about as good as we're going to get from Rolly O'Brien. I don't think you would expect a better game. He doesn't clunk his marks, so you can't expect him to clunk marks in the wet. He's not a good kick, but he did, lay someone out at one stage. He tried his guts out, and I think the biggest criticism of him at stages is that it looks like he's not trying. He's not getting to enough contests. He's not imposing himself in the air enough, and I felt like he was working back. The only thing, and I don't know whether it was an instruction or whether it was him, but I didn't like him working forward. I didn't want to see him forward. We've already got a freaking Forrest up forward. Why do you need the ruckman to go down there as well? And it leaves us exposed on the way out. So either that was Riley taking it on himself, or that was just another failed instruction from the coach that we're not talking about anymore.
Well, Rob has actually got an outstanding IQ. So he's got 4 different degrees, and wants to be a nuclear scientist. And the guy is actually mentally very, very clever, but doesn't translate onto the football field. And when it comes on the football field, he's a lot less than normal in terms of IQ. So I would think that was just him doing his own thing there, because he just lumbers around the ground.
Well, it happened more than once.
He gives 100%.
It happened more than once,
yeah.
Macca, and if I was a coach and I saw it happen once, I'd get someone out to him straight away saying, do not go down to the forward line again. So I'm inclined to think it was an instruction to go and try and make Darcy Cameron accountable, or Mason Cox. Anyway,
I've just been correct. Yeah, he ultimately wants to operate in the medical field, but the guy does have 4 degrees. Clever man.
Well, he should maybe be like studying football a bit more instead of going.
No, it doesn't translate. It doesn't translate.
We're paying him. We're paying him $500,000. He owes us. Like, go and study football. Watch a few bloody tapes of, like, Dean Cox or someone like that.
Oh, yeah, when you've done 4 degrees, you haven't got time for that. No, look,
well, that's what I'm saying. He shouldn't have done 4 degrees. Anyway, let's move on from him. Zach Taylor, God, he's a smart footballer and he does some really good things. I just wonder whether we've got room for him in our side, Brownie.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for that breakout game where he actually gets some decent number of possessions, but he does some really good things. And I also just worry a bit about his size. He can get sort of pushed around a bit. I think the jury's out, but they've given him a good run. I think it's now a case of, if someone's going to go out of the side and we're going to try some of these young guys, he's going to have to start probably showing a little bit more if he's going to stay in the side. And I know Big Man's a massive fan, but
I think he's at Zach's house tonight, actually. We probably need to give him a bloody... We probably need to play him in the midfield a bit, considering that's what we bloody recruited him for or drafted him for.
I agree. 100%. I think he's got footy smarts, Matt. I reckon he's got really good footy smart. He's not getting enough of the ball, I do agree, but he's not being played where he should be.
I couldn't even tell you where he's being played.
Well, I mean, last week he was used as a tagger on Rosie in the second half. So, yeah. But I'd like to see him give it a go in some CBAs as well, because I do think he is a smart footballer. I think he's not just dumb and just physically running at it. He's relatively slight, so he's got to be smart, and I think he is. But he isn't getting quite enough of the ball. I do agree with that. But then again, is he given the right opportunities to do it? So
no,
it's another case of.
I wouldn't have thought so.
No, well, it's another case of making a player unsuccessful by poor coaching.
Well, how many? Stop saying that word, Macca. We'll get more bad comments.
Okay, it'll slip out again, I'm sure.
Yeah. Bad management. Let's call it management.
Okay, bad management.
Yeah, the last one I want to talk about is Isaac Cumming. Is he another player that's suffering from? Is he another bloke that's suffering from being played out of position? He's a halfback flanker.
Played both at GWS. Played halfback flank and wing, but mostly halfback.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's more effective at halfback. But because we got Miller stuck on one side, that sort of takes one of them out. That really just forces him up onto the wing because of the way players are managed.
Yeah. No, Jad, I don't want everyone at halfback. I just want the right blokes in the right positions. And generally, if you recruit a bloke for a position, you play him there. You don't stick him somewhere else. We recruited Miller as a midfielder, and then he got unfortunate knee injuries, but we've tried to turn him into a halfback, and to me he's been found wanting. And to be perfectly honest, Miller would probably be a better bloody wingman, to be frank, wouldn't he? Well,
has he got the physical stamina to keep up with it? In terms of when you look at the way he plays and his skill level, you'd say yes. But whether a wingman's got to really patrol at least between half forward and half back non-stop, and I don't know that Miller has got that stamina in him. What they like about Miller is that if he's got ball in hand and he's not being pressured, he generally can do something very constructive with it. But where
how
he
many times does
he becomes
happen outside of training?
Well, I'm going to say where the problem comes is the fact most of the time he's getting it, he's under pressure, and he's not the best pressure taker in the team.
Welcome to AFL football. All right. So disappointing. Let's just do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll go into your results, Mac. Just hang on a sec. Okay. What do we got here? Tipping. Let's see. Here we are. Tipping. Oh, where's the bloody... Here we are. All right. No one got more than 6, I don't think. Phoenix got 4.
6 was a good. 6 was a good score this week.
Phoenix got 4, kept me off the bottom. So there's a little bit of tied up foot. Jordan's still in front of 65. We've got Mike and Jason on 64. Callum on 63. Mundra on 62. And then a few on 61 and 60. So it's getting quite tight. I wish Matt was here. I'm going to have to get someone who's got access to the fantasy league so that I can pop up the fantasy scores because I don't have a login to that. So if anyone's got a login to that, or Matt, if you're listening down the track, we need to work something out so that we can get that up on the screen next week, because I haven't been able to put it up. In the interim, why don't we talk about Macca's weekend results, because it was an interesting round, Mac.
It was, really was.
Let's run through them. We had the Suns getting up over the Hawks by, 8 points? 16-8, 104 to 15-6, 96.
Yeah, that Hardwick effect is starting to take place at the Gold Coast. They're not only skillful, they're starting to get a lot tougher as well. And this was a clash of the Titans. There were two of the teams right up at the top. And I think most of us thought that Hawks would win, but then I did have a quick change of mind and went for Gold Coast. But the Gold Coast, their midfield was really the key in this game. That made them dominant early, which got them a lead. Good coach that they have at Hawthorn. He made a few changes, and in the third quarter they got going, and I thought, shit, they're going to run over them. But no, Gold Coast, their midfield got back on top in the last quarter, and it was a real fight to the finish. But Gold Coast, they got up by 8 points, and it continues their unbeaten run at TO, which is quite outstanding.
Just quickly, do you reckon Hawthorn are one classy midfielder short?
Yeah, definitely one. You're quite right there, Fang. I mean, that's what they got beaten by here. They probably overall had a better team than Hawthorn, but they lacked in that midfield area, the real class. One thing I must mention there, Noble, I don't know how often this happens, but he had 1,001 metres from his 36th disposal.
Oh, seriously? Bloody hell. Yeah, everyone's saying Will Day in the chat. Obviously, Will Day is the one that tops up that midfield.
He does, but I still don't think Will Day's at the level of the really, really, really classy midfielders. He's a working midfielder, a really good working midfielder.
I don't know about that, Mac. When he's not.
No, I like him.
Injuries.
I like him as a player,
anyway,
don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not belabor the point. Sydney, 11-12-78, touched up Carlton, 9-8-62.
Yeah, look, it was a very substandard game because it was a very slippery surface there. It had rain first, and then, but look, Carlton, they were on top for the first three quarters. I thought, Sydney, they're going to go down again. But Heaney and Warner, they had other ideas about it, and they just poured it on. I mean, Heaney ended up with 38 touches. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had 38 touches, Warner, and kicked a couple of goals. Warner, he had 30 touches and 2 goals. And in the last quarter, they kicked 5-5 to 2-2 to win it by 14 points. And Carlton, if you're within QE with Carlton at three-quarter time, you know you've got them. They're no good.
And our great mates, Port Adelaide, just a narrow loss to Geelong, 5-9-39 to 17-13. 1-1-5, putting our victory last week into perspective.
Yeah, played in very slippery conditions, went in slippery conditions, but it was a piss poor effort by Port on their home deck. The only area in which they matched the Cats, if they had the same number of twanged hammies for the match, they were quite pathetic actually. They got 1 goal in each of the last 3 quarters, and they got a princely 2 in the first quarter. But it was a very poor effort. But Powell Pepper, pat on the back, 2 goals to him. Good game. Rest of Port, no good.
Then we had the Giants going down to a rejuvenated Dockers. Giants just sputtering along this year. I don't know what's going on there. 8-13, 61 to 13-17, 95. That's a good win from Fremantle.
Interesting, though. No Darcy in ruck, and Jackson has to step up in ruck, and he did. And Virtue was almost a solo ruckman, and Sarong and Brayshaw, well, Sarong struggled last week, got 36 disposals this week. Brayshaw had 30 disposals because Jackson dominated the rucks. Bolton, who migrated from Richmond, he had 15 disposals and kicked 3 goals, and it was a total form reversal, really. It really got, GWS never looked like winning it, and it was right from the word going.
Was it at Monaco or was it at NG?
NG. Played at NG.
Yeah, okay. And then today we had, or was it today? No, last night. I can't freaking remember. Bulldogs, anyway, gave Essendon a lesson, 18-19-127 to 5-6-36.
Well, this was another absolute thrash match. Look, Bulldogs are very good, and
let's not spend time. You get 5 minutes, not 15.
Okay, they thrashed a pathetic Essendon. Just leave it at that. But we'll have to just say one point. Bailey Dale, 49 disposals, and his was 1,016 metres, Fane.
That's incredible, isn't it?
It is two over 1,000. I've never heard of it before.
No. And then North, gritty 4-point victory over fellow cellar dwellers Richmond. I reckon North might be a bit disappointed it was that close, 12-6-78 to 11-8-74.
Yeah, look, it always looked like North were going to win until the last dying stages. Richmond really poured it on. In fact, they got in front there at one stage, and I thought that's the end of North. They won't come back, but they did, and they got in front and just hung on to win the game. So Zeri was outstanding. 52 hit-outs, 11 clearances. And
then, surprisingly, because I was watching this game for a little while and then I'd switched it off, and when I came back, bloody Melbourne had won. Lions 13-10-88, Melbourne 14-15-99.
Well, it was like somebody got a switch there, Clean, because if you're watching the game, Brisbane were always going to win it. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter. Up to about halfway through the last quarter, it was like somebody lit a switch and Melbourne just poured it on. And all of a sudden, Gordon had been very good all game, but his influence came to the fore, and everybody just piled in for Melbourne, and Brisbane sort of stopped, and Melbourne got up. It was just an amazing. For 3.5 quarters, you never thought it was a chance, and then all of a sudden it just happened.
And I reckon the only thing worse than being a Crow supporter in this competition would be being a St Kilda supporter. Because, Jesus, they know how to give you a little sniff, just a little hint, and then they go and lose by bloody 28 points to West Coast, 16-12-108 to 12-8-80.
Well, this was interesting because I thought the Eagles put a lot of physical pressure on St Kilda in this game, and I think that's what actually won the game. Because, the Saints made a little bit of a bid at the end, but all through the rest of the game, the Eagles, they would just a certain amount after quarter time, then increase half time, decrease 3/4 time. Bit of a comeback to reduce the margin a bit by Saints at the end, but it was just sheer pressure by the Eagles. It was outstanding, actually, and they were well coached. So obviously that was the plan, and it worked.
All right, so it leaves us with the top 8 of Collingwood on top. 2 points clear of Brisbane on 30. Gold Coast obviously on 28 with a game in hand. Hawthorn also 28. Then we have the Bulldogs usurping the Crows in 5th spot. Crows now in 6th spot, along with Geelong in 7th spot on 24. The Giants in the 8 on 20 points. And then out of the 8 on 20 points, Freo and Essendon. Carlton, Sydney, St Kilda, these bloody names, St Kilda and Melbourne and Port all on 16 points, Richmond on 12, North on 10, and Walich Marawa on 4.
West Coast.
So yeah, we're starting to be under a little bit of pressure. There's some teams coming up from underneath us. Obviously, Geelong pushing up hard as well. Their percentage is almost as good as ours now. Western Bulldogs had a massive percentage game, which has put them in front of us. But yes, it's just starting to show that we're just back to the pack. Brownie, back to the pack.
Yeah, we are. Let's just hope. Yeah, the next 2 weeks are both winnable games. So let's just hope we can get both of those in the locker. And also, let's hope this week we can get some percentage, because our percentage was not really strong a couple of weeks ago and it's fallen away a bit. What are we now, about 124 or something?
124, yeah.
Yeah, so that's sort
still
of
not terrible,
come back,
but
and that might be it might be crucial in terms of fighting for 6, 7, 8. depending on where our percentage might end up. So, yeah, but let's just take it one game at a time, hey?
Thank you, Matthew. On that, though, we obviously have an opportunity against West Coast, who, let's be honest, we're playing them at home. We should beat them. They've had their one good win for the season. Are we going to stay true to? Are we going to stay true to what we were saying earlier in the podcast and rest 3 or 4 players?
Well, I'm resting Tex for certain. I definitely would. Look, I think if you're going to make any changes, this is the game to rest players. This is the game to do it. I wouldn't do any more than say 3 maximum. I think otherwise you can really upset your balance. But although it didn't seem to affect Collingwood, but they know what they're going to do. Yeah, look, I think it's a game I think we should win by at least 48 points, I reckon.
What do you reckon, Brownie? Who do we rest?
Well, I think definitely Tex. You definitely would after his performance on the weekend and just the fact that they haven't taken the opportunity yet. And I thought they would have given him a rest in the first 6 weeks. I'm just surprised they've kept going back to the well. So I'd rest him, and hopefully that gives us a chance to get Sid in. But whether he's done enough in the twos yet to warrant a recall, I'm not really sure. I'm hoping that they see it that way. I'd probably even think about, there's not really anyone else I'd probably want to rest on, just to try and conserve their body. But I'd have a think about giving Miller a spell and maybe
absolutely
trying to just sharpen up the half-back flank a bit. Whether you do try Edwards or we've got that many half-backs, we're sport for choice, but I think it'd be a prime opportunity to give someone else a try.
Yeah, look, I agree. I would certainly be resting Tex. I would be dropping Miller. I'd be having a good think about Luke Nankervis as well. They would be the 3 changes that I'd probably make. I got to say, Neil Bullen needs to have a bigger game. I accept everything that you're saying, Macca, about him being played out of position, but I think he just needs to step up a little bit. I would have loved to have seen Hugh Bond get a run this week, Charlie Edwards to get a run this week, Sid to come back in. I think Luke Pedler's played it pretty well over the last 2-3 weeks, notwithstanding last week was a bye. There's blokes that are ready. Harry Schonberg's picking up his 23 to 25 touches. There's some good numbers coming out of the SANFL. So if, we bang on all podcasts about selection integrity and building for a real push in 26-27, then we don't really give a shit about this year, do we? And we should be putting gains into those players, right?
Well, I think it's a game that we should win anyhow, Pete, and in the sense that, no, you can't take anything for granted, and you've got to be 100% to win games, and as they showed against St Kilda. But we're playing at home, and all the other, and Tex played poorly, so that's an obvious one. So you're not weakening the side there. You're probably strengthening the side by making a change there. And then the other two players you talk about didn't have great games, so you're not going to actually weaken them by bringing the other players in anyhow. So I don't think you're risking losing the game by making those changes. I'd do it.
Who cares if we lose a game?
I prefer to win rather than lose. But I don't want to lose to West Coast at home. No, I don't.
But sorry, you can't whinge, Macca, about us giving games to Lockie Murphy and Brodie Smith and then give a shit about winning this game. Can't have a cake and eat it too, bro.
I think you can when you're playing the bottom side. I think you can. We should be able to make 10 changes and still win it.
Well, that's exactly right. I agree with you, Brownie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I said I'd make 3 changes.
Right.
But I said I'd make 3 changes.
I guess what I'm saying is that we, as a club, we've got sucked into wanting to win games of footy when we should be developing a squad of players. Now the ship's probably sailed on that, but like to me, I'm all. We need to give these blokes Dowling and Sid and Peds and all these. We need to give them games. Have to give them games. So if not now, then when?
Well, I think, when you make these changes and you give these people opportunities, you do it by resting players that are either physically need that rest or their form doesn't warrant their selection, or it was marginal. And I think that we, the three changes we talked about, they're all justified. But who else would you then rest other than the three that we mentioned?
Well, Nankervis, Miller, Tex. I'd give Ben Keys a rest. I think he's either carrying something or just needs to freshen up. He hasn't gotten much involved in games over the last month or so. He could be omitted as a managed. Dan Curtin is one that I'd have a think about, depending on how we want to play. I don't think he's been a success on the wing, to be honest with you, Dan Curtin. And I still believe that until he builds up a little bit more match fitness and a little bit more agility, he's nothing but a third tall, a lead up forward. And you might replace Tex with Curtin and bring someone like Dowling or something onto the wing. I don't know, but I think Dan Curtin's position's got to be thought about, how we use him. Zach Taylor needs to run through the middle. So who makes way for that, or do we just have more rotations through the middle?
Well, just on Curtin, I thought actually his game on the weekend is probably the best game that he's played for Adelaide.
No, not even close.
Well, he had 12 possessions and in a fairly tough game, and I think he only had 2 or 3 the week before.
Yeah, he wasn't terrible.
I'm not saying he's terrible. See, Wayne Miller had 17. How do you reckon his game went? Stats mean shit, Macca.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're talking about improving, giving
line.
young
I already
players.
said that.
I'm giving you back some cake. It applies to Curtin as well. Get the games into him so that he can actually perform better.
I didn't say drop him. I said, I said we need to think about how we use him, and maybe he's the one that goes down to replace Tex up forward as a third tall, a lead up tall, and we bring in someone like Dowling onto the wing.
Well, I thought I liked his game in the sense that I could see that he was improving and he was starting to believe a bit more in himself, and that's why I would like to leave him where he is.
Yeah, Ragnar says it's kick for goal. He's actually a pretty good kick for goal. He just like everyone else, he just choked it. Look, I just think, I know we won't. I guess the point I'm probably facetiously making, Mac, is that we get pissed off about the fact that Nix goes to the well with the same old players week after week. And what I'm saying is we've got an opportunity against the bottom side to get a game into some of these other blokes. You can't pussyfoot around. You're either in one camp or you're in the other. Now you're saying, we want to win the game. Well, we should win. We could probably win the game with our SNFL team. The fact is that the priority still should be building this squad up, not winning a game of football this week.
I think both. I think you tried.
Well, then everything that you said at the beginning of the podcast is a big load of crap.
No, it's not.
It is, because you can't have one and not the other. You can't have it both ways, Macca. You either develop your squad and put games into blokes that maybe aren't ready at the expense of senior blokes who are not going to be part of it, or you go all in and play every senior player you've got and forget about the kids. You can't have it both ways.
No, look, I've already said it. But 3 of the regular players, I would rest. I would rest 3. So, the only thing we're arguing about is how many. You're saying almost unlimited.
No, what I'm saying is that you give a shit about winning the game. I couldn't care less.
I always, I want to win every game.
Yeah, but that's
but not
all right. I'm not talking to you anymore.
No, but not at the expense of not building your squad.
Oh, of course, yeah. So you're living in a fantasy world.
No, I'm not.
Anyway, Brownie, what do you reckon?
I'm understand what Mac is saying. I think we can leave out some experienced players, and it won't be detrimental by playing our younger guys. I think a lot of our experienced players, as we've said before, might be racking up possessions, but they're not damaging and they're not overly proactive footballers. So if you're swapping Dowling for a Matt Crouch or whatever, I don't think you're losing a lot. Like Dowling showed that he's at the level when he played last time. Sure, he wasn't racking up 30 possessions, but his possessions were meaningful. He was hitting targets. He was kicking goals. I don't think we're necessarily, if we play 5 or 6 of those young guys, I don't think we're necessarily going to make the team a lot worse. And of course, your goal is always going to be to win, but you have to be prepared to lose and stick with the program. I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I get it. I understand where you're coming from, but like even a bloke like Jake Saligo could probably do with the rest this week. Freshen up. Why not?
Yeah. Again, I disagree, but
but you want to win the game, Macca. I couldn't give a flying rat's ass whether we won this game or not. Like, here's the way I see it. Right, we had an opportunity to get ourselves into a position where we could make a really good push for the flag this year, and so my decision, my thoughts were, all right, we've got a couple of key games, and if we win them, then I'm all in. Let's go. It's a fairly open year. Let's go see what we can do. But that loss against Collingwood and the previous loss against Geelong has told me that we aren't going to do anything with this current 22. Okay, so we should not be in let's win a flag mode. We should be in we need to continue to develop this squad mode, which, let's face it, we should have been in for the last 18 months. So now winning, to me, becomes secondary to building, putting games into other blokes. And at least seeing, like, you've got to make decisions on blokes. Is Dowling up to it? Is Schoenberg up to it? Is Draper up to it? Is Pedler up to it? All these blokes. We can't just keep messing them around because they'll bugger off somewhere else. Sam Berry is going to pick up a contract somewhere else, probably at St Kilda or Western Bulldogs or something like that, and he'll play 150 AFL games because we keep stuffing him around.
Look, you're right. You're right in that sense. But having said, we against Geelong, we were close to winning the game, and against Collingwood, we were close to winning the game. No, if we were getting done by 6 or 7 goals, I would be supporting exactly what you're saying. But we're not a million miles away from it. We're not a million miles away. We're not right on it, what I believe is you've got a core of players that you say that basically are going to be part of it, and then you quite rightly you're saying, well, you originally said, let's rest at least 3 this week. And I 100% agree with that. And that's where you give these guys an opportunity. You hope that what they'll do is play well enough to force you to pick them again next week. But if you put in 6 or 7 of them at the one time, you're going to be in a situation, because you don't care whether you're going to win, then you're actually going to unbalance the side somewhat, and it might perform rather poorly, or at least you won't actually get an opportunity to see what their best is. Whereas with these other 3 coming in, with all the other normal players there, they get an opportunity to perform. That's just the way I see it.
For everyone that's watching this video, I'd be happy to get your comments on YouTube. So drop your comment in, tell me what you think. I think we're probably somewhere in the middle, Mac, because I think you care. I agree. You can't make 7 changes. That's a bit silly. But by the same token, I think you care too much about winning, and I think you actually think we're closer than what we are. I don't think we're close at all.
I don't think we're a long way away, mate. No, I really don't.
No, I know you've said that, and I'm just reiterating that that's where you and I differ. Brandy, where do you sit on all of this? You're sitting in the background smirking.
Yeah, well, yeah, you've gone hard this week, so it has been enjoyable. I think I'm probably in between both of you. I think we're definitely
no offence to him.
We're not going to push for a flag this year. We're not going to make a prelim this year. So I do agree. I'd be, within reason, trying to play as many of these young guys as we can. Like, for example, when Matt Crouch is fit, I wouldn't be bringing him back. I'd be saying thanks very much. And you're playing in the twos. I think we want to push.
Come back.
I know he will, but I wouldn't be doing that. That's an example of holding us back because he's not going to be part of our next push for a flag. So why play him? Yeah. Which is exactly what Malcolm Blight did when he came to the club. He said these 3 guys are club legends. They're never going to be part of our next flag, and our next flag was that year. Yeah. But we wouldn't have won the flag had he stuck with the old players. So, that's right. And that's unusual. But I think we're realistically, 26, 27, if we do the right thing and get games into our young players now, we can push towards the end of next year or definitely 2027. If we don't put games into young players, the risk is what you just said before. 3 or 4 of them are going to be at other clubs by 2027, and they might come back and bite us on the arse.
Well, Vardy said something in the chat earlier, and I think that's probably the point. That we're reaping what we've sown from past selection issues. That this problem really started back into 23 and throughout 24. There's a strong possibility that we don't make finals this year. There's a better than even chance that we don't make finals this year. So, Mac, I don't know how you can say that we're not far off it when we may miss the finals again for the 8th year in a row.
Yeah, but when you're talking, in the AFL, there's a fairly fine line between being at one level and being at the next level. It's a fairly fine line,
I think there's a massive gap. I think there's a massive gap between those that you could count as potentially winning the flag this year and the next 6 to 8. I think you've got Brisbane, you've got Collingwood, you've got Geelong, you've probably sneak Hawthorn in there and maybe give a little wink to Gold Coast, and I reckon there's a massive gap, or probably
Bulldogs.
Probably Bulldogs over Gold Coast, actually. I think Gold Coast might just need a year of getting used to winning.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a massive gap.
But you're saying we're a massive gap behind them.
Well, there's a 50% chance. I've done a ladder predictor that has us finishing 9th. And that's not with me saying we're going to lose every game. That's with us winning all our home games and picking up 1 or 2 away games and other games going as you'd predict them to go, and we finish 9th.
If we finish 9th, we are a massive failure, not a little failure, a massive failure. And the reason, 2 years ago,
I will clean your car for a month if we make the finals.
Oh God! Now everybody, you heard that. You heard that, everybody.
Absolutely.
I like my car cleaned daily.
Oh yeah, I'll spit and polish it. Don't worry about that. I'll spit on it anyway. And if the Crows don't make the finals, you're going to use up all your Sammy's vouchers on taking me out to dinner.
Well, I'm down to 1 at the moment, so...
well, you better start ringing 5AA and get some more, because I'm bloody hungry. I would love us to make the 8 and for us to get some finals experience, et cetera, et cetera. But all I'm saying to you is that there's a better than even chance that we don't make the 8. And on that basis, I think that you're being a little optimistic by saying that we're not far off it. I think we have a lot of the pieces, right? I really do. But I think some of those pieces are actually sitting in the twos, and we'll waste them. We've wasted a couple already. We'll waste a couple more with the selection crap that we go through. And that's why I'm saying, I guess, that when we get an opportunity against a side like West Coast, I really want to give these boys a bit of an opportunity to show us what they can do.
Right. Well, some of them we've seen before, and the ones you've mentioned, and Pedler, for example, very, very injury prone, not totally reliable. I mean, he's got a ton of ability, but by all means, try him and play him. But I'm not, as I said, I'm not against giving but I don't want massive changes. I 3, maximum 4.
Okay. Anyway, we probably did that far too long. Sorry, my apologies for that. So obviously, we all think we're going to win.
Your margin, please.
Given if it's a dry day, I don't know what the weather's going to be. But any sort of reasonable conditions should be a 6 to 10 goal win. Brownie, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I'd say 8 to 10.
Yeah, 8's my margin, and and they'll come across here, and they'll actually be feeling good about themselves having a win. So I think they might be a little bit tougher opposition than they normally would be. I see somebody in the chat said Crows by 80, but I don't think so. Look, I'd be happy if it was, but no, I'm thinking that I think if we don't win by about 8, we haven't achieved.
What I would like to see more than the result is a couple of young lads get a run, and for us to play an open brand of football. If we trot out this bloody conservative crap again against a low team like West Coast, then it wouldn't matter whether we make the 8. We're not winning anything in the finals with that crap.
No, I must admit there seems to be some radical change in our game plan at the moment.
All right, well, Mako, thanks for taking my barrage, and Brownie, thanks for refereeing.
No
I'm used to
it,
mate.
I like.
Look at the scars. I'm used to it.
No, you're right, mate. Just a nice crisp Riesling with the fish, Mac. If you could get something like that out of the cellar.
I'll do my best, mate.
All right, look, thanks to everyone who's stuck through to the end of the cast. Appreciate that. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube if you feel so inclined. We will be back next week. And don't forget, too, you can join the Discord if you haven't already. Lively chat during the week and on game day as well as during the podcast. So thank you to everyone. Gentlemen, be well, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, mate.
Good night, all.
See you, Maka.
Yep, see you, Bernie.